Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Xony, and today we're going to have some more stories from Reddit. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go. Now let's get into today's stories to find out what happened. I'm 35, and my ex-wife Emily is 30. As of the time I write this story, Emily and I had been married for more than 5 years, and I loved her so much. The truth is, we go a long way back, as we grew up in the same community and attended the same school at a particular point in our lives. I was way ahead of her in class, and though we weren't together like the typical high school lovers, we met when I was my late 20s. We dated and broke up a couple of times, but in the end, we realized we could not stay without each other because we were so deeply in love. I worked for a top construction company, and because of my busy schedule, I was barely at home to spend time with my ex-wife. She complained a couple of times, but she knew I was out there making money and trying to close deals, so I could afford the kind of lifestyle she wanted. Emily was a remote worker. She worked from home, and her job kind of gave her enough time to do the things she liked, hang out with her friends, and she could even afford to put off her work for a couple of hours to watch her favorite television shows. But it was not so for me. If I wasn't inspecting a particular site or trying to buy an old house for renovation, I was working on site, and by the time I came back home, I would be so exhausted. And this went on for a while. I tried to make it up to Emily as much as I could. During the weekend, we'd go out, just the two of us, jump on a mini vacation whenever we could, and I bought her expensive stuff just as my way to make up for my unavailability. She loved all of those things, and she understood that I was doing the most to make her happy. We didn't have a child yet because she said she was not ready to be a mom, and besides, she wanted me to make more money so our child could have the best life, get a good education, and not have to struggle as we did in the early stages of our lives. Though I tried to talk to her a lot of times about it, I even explained to her that they were people who were not earning as much as we did, but they had a comfortable family, and they were all happy. But she kept insisting that when the time was right, she would let me know, so I backed off. All along, I did not know that Emily was having an affair behind me, and she was so good at hiding it. It all began while I'm a bit early from work one day, and she was preparing to go to a meeting. She had her makeup on, wore a beautiful blue tight dress, released her blonde hair, and wore a pair of black heels. That did not look like an ideal meeting outfit to me, but I shook it off. When she returned home that evening, she was covered in a strong, masculine cologne, and when I asked her about it, she said she hugged a couple of people after the meeting, and she could not tell where the cologne came from. I bought that too, and let it slide. But she raised my suspicions when she declined our mini vacation just because she wanted to be a part of her girls' hangout, which could have been rescheduled, and she claimed she had more reunion meetings to attend. I understood that she was the treasure of her class, but it just did not make any sense for her to turn down traveling with me for a school reunion meeting and her girls' hangout. She knew how much I worked my ass off, and she knew I was not going to be getting a long break anytime soon. And besides, it had been months since we spent quality time together. So after she attended her meetings 3 times that week alone, I knew something was off, and I decided to find out on that particular day. She said she was going on a girls' night out with her friends, but she would be sleeping at one of her friends' houses that night. I knew Emily was a social butterfly. She just wanted to be a part of everything, but my instincts told me she was lying. She showed no iota of concern about leaving me at home, despite knowing that I really wanted to be with her. The funny thing was, she spent the whole day picking out what to wear and was more concerned about her looks than the outing itself, which was very unlike her. I had a backup phone and I left it in her car while I pretended to see her off that evening. It was hard for me, but I had to be sure I was making things up in my head. Some minutes after she left, I phoned one of her friends and told her that I wanted to surprise Emily that night, and I asked where they'd be hanging out, but from the way she sounded confused on the phone, it was obvious there was no girls' night out, and Emily lied to me. A part of me wanted to let it slide, and another part of me needed to know what was going on. I followed my tracker, and it led me to a fancy restaurant far from her friend's house where they were all supposed to meet up. I must say that stepping out of my car to see Emily cuddled and being fed by her high school sweetheart was stomach-wrecking for me that night. I recognized him instantly. He was a guy that went to the same high school as us. I knew she was up to something, but I was definitely not expecting to see her with David of all people. Anyways, I did not create a scene. I just made sure she saw me, and I walked back to my car. The moment she saw me, she ran after me, but I drove off, and I was thinking she'd drive after me immediately, but she didn't. I got home before she did, and I didn't hesitate to throw her things out of the house. By the time she returned, she was a complete mess. Her eyelids were swollen from crying, and she tried to beg me to forgive her and give her a second chance. But that was the worst form of betrayal. I asked her to go back to David, and that's when she flipped and told me she was leaving anyway. She said I wasn't giving her attention, barely spent time with her. She didn't feel loved, and David was a better man than I was. She even told me she was pregnant for David, and she even wanted to do me a favor and tell me the child was mine. Unfortunately, I had enough for one night, so I asked her to give to David what belonged to David, and I threw her out. A couple of months later, we divorced, and by then her baby bump was so visible. It didn't take long before David ghosted her, and she had to deal with the baby all by herself, pay for her rent and do multiple jobs just to get things going. To even think that I never asked her to contribute to the rent or some of the bills at home. I paid all of them by myself, and I never complained. Yet she never appreciated any of that. It was her loss because I did all I could to treat her right, and I was faithful. But I have moved on now, though it was hard. But I know I'm going to be open to being with someone better pretty soon. Now let's get into today's second story. Hello, I'm sharing this story because my ex-wife April, 26 female, messed up big time. When April and I got married, she swore that nothing was going to come between us, and I believed her. Our love was young. We had just been married, and it wasn't up to 2 years, though we dated for a few years before getting married because of our beliefs. Our marriage was the kind of relationship where we did not get intimate before marriage. So after we got married, it was a lot of exploring for the both of us. The first few months of our marriage were awesome. We made love almost every day, and that's because I could not get enough of her. She was crazy about me, and I was crazy about her, too. And despite our busy work schedule, we always found ways to maximize our moments together. April worked part-time at a bakery, and I worked at a tech company. Right from when we met, she always told me how she wanted to work at a bakery and possibly own hers one day. I was the one who advised her to leave her job, since it was not paying so much, and do the things she loved, and she listened because of her passion and consistency. After we got married, she was lucky to get a baking contract from one of her friends who needed her to bake and sell pastries every Tuesday. The contract was a juicy one, and she took it before she got the contract. We used to spend more time together on Monday evenings talking about our day at work and the best. But since selling at her friend's talk show was an every week thing, April and I became distant. It wasn't just about Monday nights anymore. She just changed and paid less attention to me. If she wasn't baking, she'd either be on her phone or she was just not paying attention to me like she used to. Slowly, our intimacy reduced. She would always claim she was not in the mood, even when she knew how much I loved to make love to her. As if all of these were not enough, I noticed that April stayed out late on Monday nights, and if I asked her why, she'd say she went grocery shopping for the next day, and sometimes she would pick a fight with me over it. Funnily enough, whenever she returned from her grocery shopping by 10:00 p.m., she'd come home with a very small bag, and since I was familiar with her baking ingredients, I knew most of them did not need refilling as she claimed. At first I tried to understand her because she returned from the bakery where she worked by 6:00 p.m., and she did not have time during the day to go shopping. But when she began to stay out late several times on Monday nights and would return with almost nothing in the bag, I knew something was wrong. It was more suspicious when she'd even come back and go straight to the bathroom with her phone, which she rarely did till the next day. It became more frustrating that I'd return home by 7:00 p.m. and she'd leave almost 30 minutes after without a good reason and would still stay out till 1:00 a.m. When I could not take it anymore, I hired a private investigator to follow her on her Monday nights. It was one of the best decisions I ever. The pie returned with pictures of April and a man whose name was Alex, and they'd hang out together until she drove back home. There were pictures of them kissing, hugging each other, kissing in the car, and even pictures of her going into his house. The pie followed her for 3 Mondays just to be sure. When he gave them to me, I was devastated. Our marriage was barely 2 years old, and she was already cheating on me. I was so pained, and I could not believe what my eyes had seen. I wouldn't have imagined spending the rest of my life with someone else, but April ruined all of the vows we made to each other. I wanted to pay her back, and that's when I came up with the perfect plan. Her birthday was just around the corner, and coincidentally, it was on a Monday too. Before I left to work on her birthday, I told her I would not return home early, but I would make it up to her during the weekend, and she agreed. Meanwhile, I already made preparations for a surprise party, and her friends and family were coming in with cakes, gifts, and drinks for her. That evening, we all went to my apartment by 8:00 p.m. I texted her about an hour earlier and apologized again, so she had no clue any of us were coming home. I had my house keys, so accessing the house was easy. Everyone went in, the light was off, and there was loud music playing in the background, so she did hear us come in. My pie already informed me that she was home with Alex, so it was well planned and everything turned out the way I wanted it to. Aside from the house being dark, the light in our room was on, and the door was partially closed. Her mom was the first to get to the door, and immediately she opened it in a bid to surprise her. She stood at the entrance in shock, and the cake fell off her hands. Her sister screamed too, and her dad began to shout. April was caught red-handed on top of Alex, naked and pleasuring themselves. It all happened so fast, and before she could get up and cover herself, everyone had seen her. I acted surprised as well, but deep down I wasn't. I knew it wasn't the first time they were screwing each other. Her best friend Anna was there, and from the look on her face, she did not expect to see April like that. Anna tried to push people out of the corridor, but it was too late. Everyone came to take a peek at April and her lover. I pretended to be so hurt, and I punched Alex until I broke his nose. April's father tried to hold me down, but it wasn't working. April, on the other hand, was confused about who to beg or apologize to. She tried begging me and her parents at the same time, but her parents turned away in shame and left the house. I had to keep my act. So I threw both April and her lover out of the house, and the party was never held before her birthday. I had contacted a lawyer, and my divorce papers were already on their way. When it was ready, April signed and we parted ways. As I expected, Alex ditched her. He just wanted a fling with her and did not think it would ruin her marriage. Her parents shut the door behind her too, but her best friend took her in for a while though. She was so disappointed. After our divorce, she showed up at my house a couple of times and stalked me on social media, even after I blocked her. In the end, she got sent a restraining order to stay away from me and stay off my property. Though it was all planned, I still find it hard to get rid of the image of April sleeping with her lover on our matrimonial bed. I miss her most of the time. But I'm glad I learned the truth early. I have moved on now. But I'm not ready for anything serious, and I don't think I'll be anytime soon.